I probably know less about late night TV than everybody else. I became a late night host the way that people become realtors. I didn't set out in my life to be a late night host. I grew up in a different country. We didn't have that. No one grows up wanting to be a realtor. But when you get to be a realtor, you think, well, it's not a bad job. It's a pretty good job, and I kind of like it. What happened is that Letterman, David owned the time slot. So I was really basically working for Dave, but Dave was making his own show in New York. CBS were paying no attention to me because they didn't own the time slot. I mean, they were paying me to do a show that they weren't paying any attention to.
Hello and welcome to Obsessed, the podcast. I'm Matt Wilstein from The Daily Beast, and today on the show we have a very funny comedian who spent a decade as host of The Late Late Show on CBS. His new documentary series for CNN is called America on Purpose. Craig Ferguson, welcome to Obsessed, the podcast.
Thank you, Matt, and thank you for having me on Obsessed, the podcast. Why is it called Obsessed?
We're just obsessed with you mostly, and some other things too.
Yeah.
It's all the things we're obsessed with over here at the Daily Beast.
All right, I get it. You got to have a something thing. I used to have a podcast called Joy, and I started off talking about talking to people what made them joyful. And then I noticed that whenever I would bump into people that I knew who were famous, I would see this kind of look of fear in their eyes. And I was like, oh my God, I realized what it was. It was, they think I'm going to ask them to be on my podcast. So I decided, do they make you ask people to be on your podcast? Because I was like, I can't do it anymore.
Of course. I have to ask people all the time. Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of feel like I had to stop doing it because I was too busy doing this American on Purpose show and touring. I couldn't do it anymore. But I salute you for your Obsessed podcast because it's a lot harder than people think it is doing the podcasts.
It is. But this show that you're doing, America on Purpose, also seems difficult. You put a lot into it. What do you feel like is the goal of this show? Because it does feel like there is some mission to it that you're putting it out at this moment, this 250th anniversary of America on CNN. And what are you hoping to achieve with it?
I don't know. I don't know if mission is maybe too grand a word for it, but I think what I was trying to do by way of almost like a correction. Like, if your playlist has all one type of tune, it's sometimes nice to change the tune a little bit or mix it up a little. And what I wanted to do, it's kind of an extension of what or an adaptation of what I was doing in my stand-up shows. In stand-up, I made a stylistic choice for myself about 10 or so years ago that I would never, ever make any political jokes. I wouldn't talk about politics. I wouldn't think about politics. I would force myself into anecdotal, personal, observational comedy, but I wouldn't do anything that contained contemporary politics. Really, to see if I could do it. It was kind of a challenge I set myself, and I liked what it did. Everything that I did became more personal, and then I combined that kind of approach with I wrote the book America, literally wrote the book American on Purpose in 2008 when I became a citizen, and it was the title of my autobiography. But it was really the story of how I came from, being raised in Scotland, coming through that experience, growing up there, and becoming obsessed, really, funnily enough, obsessed with America, and then coming over and making my life here. And so it's a story, one immigrant story, and I kind of I wanted with this show to have a feeling for that because I felt like, especially as we approach the birthday, there is a temptation because it's a temptation to make all the notes minor keys. And I think that sometimes it's nice to look at, there's plenty wrong, but that's an oversubscribed market and people are talking about that. Let's have a look at what's right. Let's celebrate the country a little bit without being jingoistic or corny, I hope, but realistic and joyful.
Yeah, there have been a lot of attention on the perhaps unconventional ways that Donald Trump is using this moment to celebrate America, having a UFC fight on the White House lawn, putting on this concert of a lot of sort of failed musicians who have now backed out of the concert. You're doing something very different in celebrating, I think, what does make America great in a lot of ways. So do you feel like there's a contrast there?
Well, to be fair, I am also a failed musician. But I think that, one of the great joys I think about this country, one of the unusual things about the United States of America, what makes it unique, I think, in world and human history, is the fact that you are can be as American as you want in many many different ways. And we looked at a lot of different. I mean, listen, I get nothing. I get you won't see me complaining about Hulk Hogan or WrestleMania. I love all that, but I also love, many other slices of Americana that were worth, celebrating and enjoying. And it's not just a kind of a celebration, though. I think what it is it's kind of an essay, if you like. There are five essays, and I think the uh the first show we did that went out the weekend was called Becoming American, and basically that one was more about the immigrant journey, hooking it on mind, but looking at lots of different ways people become Americans. But over the course of the five that we made, we did Becoming American, or the immigration story. We did the First Amendment. We did capitalism.
I really enjoyed the episode about the First Amendment, which I guess is going to air right after people are able to watch and listen to this. And you have a quote in there that is not, I wouldn't say directly about the president, but made me think of him, which is, if you have a sense of humor, you're probably not an asshole. And I feel like that sums up a lot of what you have, taken away from your experience as a comedian and sort of the ability to speak on anything. So, can you talk about why you wanted to include that sentiment, particularly in the First Amendment episode?
Well, I think that the danger of me saying something is like that if you have a sense of humor, you're not an asshole. Is that, of course, everybody thinks they've got a sense of humor, and I mean, it's like it's one of those very unusual things. I've got a sense of humor, but that's not funny. My When I was a kid, my father, we used to watch a show called Top of the Pops in Britain, and every Thursday night, it was like, all the pop acts were on, and my dad used to always watch the bands that I liked, and he would always say, "That's not music, that's just a noise." And it sounded like I was like, "That that's what music is. It is a noise. It's just you don't like it." And I feel like a lot of people are like my dad when it comes to comedy. They go, "That's not comedy." You go, well, it is if someone's laughing. It is comedy to them. You're allowed to feel differently about it. So I think if I think what I mean is, when I say, when you've got a sense of humor like mine, then I don't think you're an asshole. But I think the truth is, most people feel. I think everybody thinks they've got a sense of humor, just in the sense that most people are not willing to be the villain of their own story. It's like, I'm right, you're wrong. I'm never wrong. And you're always wrong. And I kind of I try in my life to be a wee bit more emotionally mature with that, in the sense that, try and open it up a little bit. But I confess to thinking that if you don't have my sense of humor, I'm probably not going to get along with you. That's the truth.
The show, I mean, that episode opens by sort of acknowledging the very precarious state of late night TV and your role as a former late night host. I would say someone who does not have a sense of humor about himself is President Trump. What's it been like for you to watch him attack the late night host so directly in a way that you didn't experience when you were on the air, because your show ended in 2015, just before Trump came on the scene. So you were a host of the Obama era in a lot of ways. What's it been like to see late night TV be so directly targeted by the president of the United States?
This may come as a surprise to you, but I have been asked about late night TV before.
Oh, I'm aware.
And I've kind of thought about it a bit. And the truth is, I think I am uniquely positioned in the world. In fact, maybe of all Americans, in the sense that uh, I probably know less about late night TV than everybody else. And I'll tell
I
you
know
why.
I know you like to say that, but I think that's a little bit unfair, considering you spent a decade as one of the main network late night hosts.
Yeah, but that's your perception of it. My perception is that I became a late night host the way that people become realtors. I didn't set out in my life to be a late night host. I didn't grow up to be, thinking, oh, one day I'm gonna have a desk and do a late night television show. I grew up in a different country. We didn't have that. So I didn't grow up with that archetype. I wasn't drawn to that. And and then the other part of it is that whatever and so I became in the sense of like no one grows up wanting to be a realtor. When you get to be a realtor, you think, well, it's not a bad job. It's a pretty good job, and I kind of like it. It's rewarding, and it pays well. And what I did in late night, I think it was a very unique time in late night, not just different to now, but different to all other times in late night. Because what happened is that Letterman, David owned the time slot. So I was really basically working for Dave, but Dave was making his own show in New York. CBS were paying no attention to me because they didn't own the slot. So I really existed in a sort of pre podcast environment podcast. I mean, basically they were paying me to do a show that they weren't paying any attention to. So I existed in this strange um, kind of autonomous bubble sitting behind the mighty shoulders of David Letterman. So I disagree that I was part of a fraternity. And I remember saying that at the time. I'm not part of this. I mean, I used to say on the show, this is not a late night talk show. I'm not a late night talk show host. And I said that a lot on the show. Now, it's hard for people to understand that if it was a late night talk show that was going out late at night and I was talking on it. But in the sense that it was an archetype like the others, I don't believe that it was. I don't believe that what I made, it may have begun as that, but I don't think it continued as that. And I don't feel that, that my trajectory through that period gives me any insight into what's either going on now or what went on before. I mean, and I really mean that. I didn't, I didn't spend a lot. I mean, it's not like I was hanging around with other late night ghosts or anything like that. We didn't all live in the same house.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that the you didn't feel the fraternity because there is this new solidarity between late night hosts, which I think is a lot of it is born of the fact that they're feel targeted, and they have this podcast together. I don't know if you're aware of Strike Force 5, which is the five big late night hosts are all kind of friends and texting each other and on a podcast together and being on each other's shows. It does feel like that is a big change from when you were on, and especially, when there used to be conflict between the hosts, and even I guess you were outside of that as well, but you didn't feel this kind of solidarity club that exists now.
No, I think if there was any archetype for me, it was probably Dave. I mean, the cranky loner approach to life. That I I worked for Worldwide Pants. I didn't work really for CBS.
Yeah, which is Letterman's company.
So I was
Yeah.
on CBS, but really, I answered uh, to Worldwide Pants, and I mean, I answered to CBS a bit. They were, they obviously there was standards and practices and all that kind of stuff, but really, that world was, it will never happen again. There will never be I mean, what I was doing on late night is what happens to a TV show when executives are not present. That's what happens. It was like when your mom and dad are out and you have a party. That was my show.
It was very unique, your show, in a lot of ways, and I think the thing that I've actually heard from other guests who've been on this show, they talk about going on your show and how different it is in that there is not this pre-interview, which I think some people might know about, but not everybody knows about, where s pretty much all of the late night shows now, a celebrity goes on and they have a conversation with the producer ahead of time saying, "Okay, these are the anecdotes that we're gonna tell, and these are the stories, and this is exactly how these 7 minutes are gonna play out." And you didn't do any of that, right? You just went in, without that pre-interview, not knowing what was gonna happen.
Well, the producers could do them if the guest wanted it. I mean, I didn't forbid it. Like, some guests are used to that. I mean, that formula has been in place in television since, Jack Paar. I mean, but what I would do about it is, and I had a nice working relationship with the segment producers, but they would talk to me about if they'd had a conversation with the guest and they'd say, well, this is what's going on in their life. But I mean, obviously, you don't want to, if someone's just gone through a divorce, you don't want to say, "Hey, how's your wife doing?" So you get some information, or how's your wife, how's your husband, whatever it is. But so you get information about where they are in their life. But I didn't feel it was necessary to someone to rehearse a conversation that I was going to have with someone else. And and I still don't. When I do shows now, if you do old media shows, if you're going on like the daytime talk shows or anything like that, they still do that. They still. Um, it's a standard industry practice, really. I just didn't felt like I needed it.
Mhm. Do you feel like there's an example of an unexpected moment that that approach produced that stands out in your mind of, this never would have happened if we had mapped out exactly what we were gonna talk about beforehand?
Oh yeah. Well, I think what probably it would have been. It would never have been the way it was with Robin Williams and I. It would never have been the way it was with Carrie Fisher and I, because we became friends. And I think the reason, I mean, there were other, Kristen as well. Kristen Bell and I never did any of that. She would come out and we'd just talk. And she was one of my favorite. Betty White was the same. And Betty was old school media, but she picked up on it right away. There were certain guests who just instinctively understood it. And 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 whatever happened on stage, like some of the stuff that happened with Robin and I was just magical. And I think if we planned it, it would never have happened. We would have decided to talk about something else. But getting Robin to plan anything was never anybody's idea of a good time anyway. So it kind of worked really well for some people. And I think as people got to know I wasn't out to ambush them, then more and more people understood it, because it wasn't the fact that I wasn't doing a pre-interview because I wanted to do any kind of gotcha thing. It's just like, well, why do we do that? I mean, and if we had something that makes you uncomfortable, I'm listening to what they're saying, and if it's not going the way that it should, I'll steer it somewhere else. I can do that.
Mhm. Yeah. I think the other moment from your show that's taken on outsized influence in recent years is this monologue in which you announced that you weren't gonna be making jokes about Britney Spears and the like anymore. It kind of resurfaced during her, struggles in the last couple years. Um, you even in that bit name check Trump as someone who deserves ridicule instead of the Britney Spears of the world. And this is long before he was, running for president or president. Um, were you surprised by sort of the staying power of that sentiment that people have really gone back to it and discussed it and you obviously continue to get asked about it, including by me.
Surprised, yeah, I was surprised by the reaction to it. And to be fair, when I mentioned Trump and that, it was because I was talking about he was someone who was in a position of power, who could handle, that kind of attack, and as using him as an example of someone who was powerful, as opposed to Brittany, who was clearly someone who was powerless at the time, and obviously the distinction between the two. So I don't think it was a particularly an attack on Trump. What it was using him as an example. And what I felt at the time when I did that monologue, it coincided with my sobriety birthday. I was 15 years sober that same weekend. So I had I had a very strong feeling as I watched. I was actually on the road that weekend, and I saw it unfold on TV. That's how long ago it was. And I think it was TMZ or something. I saw it, and I was like, "Oh my god, that's so awful." And when I came in to work that morning, the writers doing their jobs correctly, had a bunch of jokes written about it. And as I began my tirade of how awful that was in the writers' room, I saw a lot of writers quietly move their pads underneath the table to put the jokes away. But really, it was only because I felt like it was for me. It was not a manifesto, and it still isn't a manifesto. Do the jokes you want to do. It wasn't. Yeah, I'm not saying you can't make jokes about this. You can make jokes about anything you want. I can't make jokes about this. I don't want to do that. And there's a lot of times, and there's a great feeling of it. It exists all the time. Like, join what we are saying. Everybody run over here. It's like, it seems to me like the media is like fucking watching toddlers playing soccer. They have no idea of strategy. They just all run towards the ball. And it's like, wait a minute. if I go over here and someone passes me the ball, I may score a goal. And I feel like I didn't want to just run blindly after every subject, every joke, everything. It just doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense to me. It didn't make sense to me then. It doesn't now. What surprises me about that monologue is that I thought I would get fired. I thought I was going to get. But I didn't care.
You thought you'd get fired for saying that you weren't gonna do that anymore, or that's
I
for
think I thought I'd get fired because I thought I was. I mean, it's still fairly early in the show. I was only a couple of years in, and I was like, I thought the show wasn't as big. That my late night show is much bigger now than it was when I was doing it. And when I did that, more I thought they're gonna shit can. They'll never renew my contract after this. But I thought, fuck it, I just don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to do it this way, and I didn't. And and I thought, something else would turn up, and something else did turn up. It was that show. The show became that. Weirdly enough, I think that monologue started pushing us into the direction where the show became autonomous, when it became not really a late night show, but something else entirely.
Yeah, I do it does make me wonder if you had stayed beyond 2015, if you would have felt the pressure to talk about politics and Trump specifically more because that's where all of the shows went. As you said, you didn't like to go with the pack. So how do you think you would have handled that if you had been there hosting the show when that was the story that everyone was talking about every night?
It's hard to say. I've thought about it before. It's kind of impossible to say. I like to think I would somehow have managed to navigate through it, but I'm not sure I would have. I don't know. I don't know how I would have handled that, and I'm glad I didn't have to be honest. Um, I think that it became the shows. The shows are something different, and would I have been dragged into making my show more like a late night? I don't know. I mean, I really don't know. Everything comedy, like everything else in life, really is about timing. And I felt I actually was going to leave like 3 years or something before I actually left. But you know, they throw a bit of money at you, you stay a little longer, and then it's like, all right, enough's enough. Um, I really don't know how I would have handled it. I've no idea.
My last Trump question, I swear. Is it true that you were once his neighbor at Turnberry Golf Course? Is that in Scotland? Is there truth to that?
There is some truth to that. Yeah, I had a place in Scotland. Well, I don't have it anymore, but I had a place in Scotland. He's still got Turnberry, but yeah, I was about 6 or 7 miles away. But I didn't go over and
Yeah, no clashes, no interactions.
no, no, I didn't run into him at any point.
Um, talking about your decision to leave late night, was the goal at a certain point to succeed Letterman to take over that show, being part of his company?
No, it's so funny that because I think that's part of the legacy thing. Because when I started doing the 12:30 show, and I'm talking the first week, um, I had journalists saying to me, "So are you gonna take over from Dave?" And I'm like, "I don't even know I don't know what you're talking about. Why would you? I don't think I'm going to last to the end of the 3 weeks I've got on this contract. I'm so no, I didn't see it that way. I didn't see it as a sports team. I didn't see it as it was floated around. People talk about it, it was not and is not in my DNA the way, and it's sometimes I think it's annoying and frustrating for people when it is in their DNA to when you say, "No, that's not for me." And they say, "But it is." And you go, "But it's not." You know? And and however much they wanted me to feel that way, I couldn't manufacture it for them, and I still can't. I think David Letterman does a very good job of being David Letterman, and I hope he continues to do it for a very long time.
Of course, CBS brought in James Corden to take over the Late Late Show. He turned it into a very different thing with a lot of games and gimmicks and carpool karaoke. Was that strange for you to see the show taken in such a different direction? Do you have any ill feelings about that?
No, none at all. I met James on many occasions, and he's a very nice man. And the other thing is this: I didn't watch late night television before I did it. I certainly didn't watch it while I was doing it, and I don't watch it now. So I do I didn't see it. You know, I saw some carpool karaoke's, but I never saw the show.
So now what I wanna do is, some more sort of career reflections, with some questions, including, is there a role for you that got away, something you auditioned for and didn't get? I do you joke, I believe, that you auditioned for Shrek, you had a failed audition for Shrek. That is not that's not real, right? Am I
That is not real. No, that is not. I did run into Mike Myers about I don't know, maybe a year or two after Shrek first came out, and I said, "You do a pretty good Scottish accent, Mike." And he said, "I got to be honest, I think yours is better."
Oh, so maybe he was doing you.
Yeah, no, I don't think he was doing me. Mike, he's got a lot of Scottish family. He can pick it up. My kids can do the Shrek accent. You know, it's like, and they are not. Well, they're I suppose they are sort of Scottish. Anyway, the no, I did not. I did not audition for Shrek. But I did audition when I first got to Los Angeles. Um, I had auditioned for the movie Braveheart before I left Scotland, and I did not get that, and I was crushed.
What role?
It was the Irish guy, the guy who heard people in his I mean, and I got very close, and I had a couple of meetings with Mel Gibson, but I never got the job ultimately, and I was very mad about it.
Yeah, that would have been a different path.
Yeah, that would have been a different path. I'm not sure how good. I don't not sure how that would have turned out, but it was definitely a fork in the road. And then when I got to LA, I was broke, and they were doing the audio book of a movie of Braveheart, and I was like, "Oh, I'll get that. And at least I'll get a couple of bucks." And I didn't get the audio book reading for Braveheart. And the casting director said to me, I'll never forget it. She said, "We liked you, but we just didn't feel your accent was authentic." And I was like, "Geez, I'm not going to win." The accent is an interesting thing because I remember people saying it goes like this: "You'll never get any work because of your accent, and then you only got that job because of your accent." It's an artifact.
Yeah, you have gotten some good animation stuff through your accent, How to Train Your Dragon, although you were not cast in the same role in the live action version. Did you take that as a
Well,
slight?
none of us were. I mean, it was like a lot of America wasn't in it. Jay wasn't in it. I mean, I think Jerry was the only one from the animation that went through. But Jerry looked like his character. None of the rest of us did.
Yeah, I don't know if you could have pulled off that character in real life.
No, I don't think so.
I'm holding out for your, live action performance in Brave when they finally make the live action Brave. Do you think you could do that one?
I don't know, man. I think that ship may have sailed. I don't know. I don't think that will happen.
Is there something in your career that you said no to at the time that you wish you could go back and say yes to?
Yeah, there is actually. I was just thinking about this the other day. Years and years and years ago, I'd done a movie called Saving Grace, and I'd written a movie with a buddy of mine, and the movie did very well, and we won the audience award at Sundance, and I was getting some offered some interesting parts. I was in the movie as well, and this was about 2000, 2001, and somebody put together it was a movie. I can't even remember the script very well, but it was a very tense psychological thing, and it was set in one room, and we had 9 days to shoot this full feature, and I came off the I came off the movie that I'd done, and I was like, "Nah, I can't do. You can't shoot a movie in 9 days. You can't do it." And I think at that time I believed that you could do that now, but I think then people were still using film, and it was a very technically much more challenging thing to do. And I just didn't believe it could be done. And I kind of wish I'd done it because I think it'd probably be quite interesting, but I didn't, and that's that.
Is there something from your career that you said yes to that you wish you could go back and say no to?
Nah, not really. I'm always kind of grateful for the work, to be honest. I don't think so. Is there anything that I've done? Well, maybe. Yeah. I can think of one movie that I did, but I don't really want to say it because a lot of people worked hard on that movie. I don't want to be the asshole that.
You did get to, do the White House Correspondents' Dinner as a very, prestigious gig.
I did.
Is there one memory that stands out from that night that you think about still?
There's so many of them, but there was I had just become a citizen. I mean, really, I think maybe 6 weeks before doing the White House Correspondents' Dinner, and when you do that gig, they still do it the same way. There's like the dais where all the people are sitting and everybody else is outside. So the people who are on the top table are all in this little holding area, this little bar, private bar backstage. And as that table fills out, the introductions are made, and people are put in their seats. People are moved out, so the crowd gets less and less. And so at the end of that, for about 10 minutes, I stood there with me and the sitting president of the United States, George W. Bush, at the time. It was just the two of us in that bar talking. I mean, whatever you think of him as a president, as a man, he's extremely affable, extremely sociable, extremely erudite and funny, and just easy to talk to. And I remember just shooting the shit with the president of the United States in a private bar backstage in a hotel in Washington, having been a citizen 6 weeks. And I thought, this is amazing. And I said to him, I said, it's a long way from where I'm from, sir, to be standing here, shooting the shit with the president of the United States. And he said, yeah, he said it's a long way where I'm from to be standing here being president of the United States, which I thought was kind of cool. But it was a very interesting, very fun. I kind of a moment that I treasure in an odd way. I just loved it.
People like to say that you should never meet your heroes, and I'm wondering if there's a story that you feel like either proves that right or wrong in your experience.
I I kind of have a slight regret about it in the sense that I had always idolized David Bowie. I loved David Bowie. David Bowie was very important to me when I was a kid. He was someone who well, you know about David Bowie. I don't need to tell you who he is, but the effect on me when I was young was looking at someone who could just uh, do anything, experiment, be who you want, wherever you want, sing what you want, go where you wanted, and also be cool. And so he was massively impactful to me. So when I got late night, I said, look, let's never ask David Bowie if he wants to be on the show because I don't want to meet him and it would be too much for me. And so we never did ask him to be on the show. But years later, after he had died, actually, I ran into, or was talking to some people who knew him, and he said he watched it and laughed at the show. It was kind of his sense of humor, and that kind of, now whether that's true or not, I don't know, but I like the idea of it because I did do an impression of him when he turned 60. I did. Should I do this or not? But I did this little thing on the show where I used to do this thing where I imagined how he was enjoying his birthday, and I did an impression of him going to the supermarket and getting some bananas and some using some coupons and stuff. It was a stupid bit, but apparently he thought it was funny. I don't know if he saw it. I don't know if that's true, but that's what I'd heard, and I kind of love that, and I kind of wish I had asked him on. I did ask, Billy Connolly on the show many times, and Billy was, Billy was Jackie Robinson to me, and and he did not disappoint. He's awesome, and he still is. He's a fantastic man, wonderful man.
Can we hear a tiny bit of your David Bowie?
Well, I don't know if it's quite as good as it used to be. But I did this voice for David going down to the shops and getting a couple of bananas. Stuff like that.
Well, Craig Ferguson, it's been such a pleasure talking with you. American on Purpose airs Saturday nights at 9 p.m. on CNN and is available to stream on the CNN app. Craig Ferguson, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks for having me.
All right. Thank you again so much to Craig Ferguson. It is always a little bit intimidating interviewing a really great interviewer, but I think that turned out pretty great. So I hope you enjoyed it. And if you're enjoying this podcast, please follow us on YouTube at The Obsessed Channel. Follow us on Instagram at Beast Obsessed. And check out this podcast wherever you get your podcasts, on Apple, Spotify. Leave us a rating and review. Leave us a comment on YouTube. Let us know what you think of the show. Thank you so much to our producer, Rachel Passer, and we'll be back with an all new episode of Obsessed the Podcast very soon.